Up until the age of 18, I had no interest in gambling whatsoever. Went to university in the first week, joined the football team and placed my first bet because pretty much all of the rest of the squad were big gamblers. So I put a £10 each way bet on, not knowing what to do, didn't even know that £10 each way was £20. Placed a bet on a 33-1 outsider, and within about 7 minutes it had won by about 12 lengths, and I'd won sort of £500, English pounds. And from that day on I was a gambler. So from 18 years of not gambling at all, I was now a gambler. I wasn't a problem gambler, but I was a gambler. And then what happened for the next 17 years, there wasn't really a day that didn't go by, but went by, but I didn't place a bet. And during that 17 years up to 2011, I transacted £4.8 million across 93 separate betting accounts, lost £1.3 million, which ended up attempting to commit suicide at work, and then handing myself into work the following day because half of the 1.3 million that I'd lost was work's not mine. So I ended up going to prison for 2 years, 8 months, and that's where Epic Risk Management came from. That desire to try and stop other people reaching the edge of a cliff and falling off that I did.
What tips could you give to other players that are in the risk zone of an addiction?
I think there's a number of things. I think the earlier that somebody can get an understanding that they're in that zone, the better. So I think a lot of that's to do with education, etc. Now, if somebody is in that place and feeling that place, then I think there's two things that they need to do. I think they need to basically put limits on. So I think what you could do is people think money and limit money, but also limit time. Look for other ways that you can spend your time. Take a break. So if you feel that gambling's getting a little bit out of control and you're spending too long doing it or too much money doing it, or it's taking over a distraction up there, then take a break. Have a week off, have 3 days off, have a week off, and just see if it's something that you control yourself or not. If it isn't, then get help early. Don't wait until it hits a rock bottom. Don't wait until you've got a bankruptcy or financial problems or relationship problems. Try and nip it in the bud early and get help and help explore your relationship with gambling early.
Do you have any tools that you could tell us about that could be helpful to others in this process of getting out of it?
Yeah, I think there's a lot of practical tools. So don't carry money that you don't need. I think a lot of it depends on how long ago it was since you last bet. So if you're in the process where you've just had a rock bottom or you've just realised that you're a gambling addict or something like that, then there's a lot of practical things. So don't put yourself in the positions where gambling's an opportunity. Don't carry money that you don't need to carry. Make sure that somebody else is helping you look after your finances and things like that. So there's a lot of practical things. I think in terms of a wider way of not relapsing or not gambling problematically, you've got to understand why you gambled in the first place. So I think we know that 9 out of 10 pathological gamblers will relapse at some point. Now I believe that the biggest reason for that is A, they don't understand why they gambled in the first place. So it's not always about making money. It can be escapism, it can be pressure and things like that. So people don't understand the real root cause of why they gambled, what the underlying issue was. The other thing is they don't replace it with anything. So I coach a young lads football team and I spend a lot of time doing it, but that fills a lot of the time that I used to gamble. And I think people think it's a financial addiction, but actually the biggest thing when you're trying to get over it is the time. And if you can get that buzz and fill the time with something else, then it's far less likely that you'll get into trouble again.
What do you think about Kindred arranging this conference? In what way is that good?
I think it's really important because I don't think that the whole phenomenon of problem gambling is going to disappear if just one party is dealing with it. So I think all the operators need to work together, but I think they also need to work collaboratively across all the different stakeholders as well. So what I mean by that is researchers, campaigners, treatment providers, harm minimisation companies like ourselves. And I think if everybody works together, along with governments and regulators as well, then there's a chance that we can start getting those figures that we see of problem gamblers down and all the harm that goes with it. So I think bringing people together into one place to hear a unified message is really, really important. EPIC is education, prevention, identification, control. So we've heard a lot at the conference today about treatment services, about research services and things like that. But what, in my view, in the UK and probably the same across Europe and across the world, there's not enough being done in terms of educating people to try and stop them getting to the edge of a cliff in the first place. And actually, if somebody's educated and they understand the potential risks of gambling, then it's far less likely they will become a problem gambler because they're making more informed decisions. And that's what EPIC do and my team do. We go into the hard to reach, so financial services, the armed forces, criminal justice, professional sport, quite widely across the UK and Europe. And we go and help people make informed decisions so that they don't end up in the same places as a lot of my team did.
What can companies in the gaming industry improve to avoid addictions, do you think?
For me, the biggest thing that we see from the ones we work with is around their interactions. So we know that operators can now identify problem gamblers quite easily. sort of got artificial intelligence, there's a lot of digitalisation, and it's not hard to identify the patterns that would suggest that somebody's a problem gambler. I think what the operators really need to work on is then, once they've identified the problem gambler, how do they then interact with them? How do they intervene with them? And I think that's where the biggest shortfall is, because if you don't intervene in the right way with a gambler at certain different stages, then it could just increase their vulnerability. So for me, it's that piece. Yeah, there needs to be things around advertising. Yes, there needs to be things around policy and procedures and things like that. But the biggest thing is, how do you interact with people once you've identified they're potentially a problem gambler?